Hello and welcome to this short recording on Tenjin technologies. If you are watching this recording, then I suspect it is because you are a student in DCU who has to do something with Tenjin as part of your coursework. So what I'm going to do over the next 5 or 6 minutes is I'll give you a brief overview of how Tenjin works and how you can make best use of Tenjin for the purpose of achieving your objectives. My name is Barry Smith. And I'm the Managing Director of Tenjin Technologies. Now, if you haven't already been introduced to Tenjin by your lecturer, then you might see Tenjin, a link to Tenjin on your Moodle course page, an example of which I'm looking at now for AC120 module. So you will see this appear this week or next week on your Moodle course page when it is brought to your attention by your lecturer. And when you click on that link, it will take you to the Tenjin server. And your landing page will look something like we see here. So you will have one or more modules listed on this page on the Tenjin server. And all you need to do is click on the relevant module for which you need to undertake some work. So for the purpose of this presentation, I'll use AC116 Financial Accounting, Basic Financial Accounting, but the model is very much the same for the other modules as well. So once you click on that particular link, you'll see a page like we're looking at now. Short instructions at the top, and then a list of topics and keywords down in the second half of the page. And what the general requirement is for you to practice questions in order to build up sufficient points for your continuous assessment purposes, or indeed just to practice as a general revision tool in preparation for your end of semester, end of year exam. It's very straightforward to select questions and generate quizzes on Tenjin. So you can simply select the topic that you want to do work on, and you can see at the top right corner there, you can immediately see how many base questions are available for each of the topics that you may want to practice or attempt for the purpose of CA purposes. So I'll choose as a simple example here ratio analysis. So ratio analysis, one of the topics on the AC116 module. Then I click on proceed. And on the second page, we'll see a list of questions that are available to us to attempt. Now, this is information about the questions that we can attempt. We can preview any of those questions that we want to see. Is this a question that I want to attempt or not? You can select or deselect questions as you need to or choose to, all the way down the left-hand side. You can also filter on basic and advanced questions. You can filter on MCQ questions and short computational questions, as the case may be. Or if you're looking for a particular type of question, we can use the text box here to narrow down the range of questions that we want to attempt. So plenty of opportunities for being able to filter on the content. Now you can see on this page that the two types of questions that are available to me are MCQs, multiple choice questions, and short computationals. Up towards the top of the page here, you can see my output options are to generate the quiz on screen, in learning mode or exam mode, and I'll explain the difference between those two in a few moments. On screen is the only way in which you can present the MCQs and the short computational questions. For longer questions, such as might be required for preparation of a tax computation or preparation of financial statements, there is the option to download the questions as a PDF. But that option does not apply to MCQs and short computational questions. So if I go back to on-screen learning mode, and we leave it at that option, that will always be the default output option that you are presented with when you come to this page initially. And I'll create the quiz. So this is the point at which I'm creating the quiz then to actually do some work. And this is what our quiz structure typically looks like, presented with the question. On the left hand side we have what I call a control panel, which I'll explain in a few moments. And in the center of the screen there you can see the actual question. So which of the following equations is correct? This is an MCQ type question where I can choose option A or B or C. And in learning mode we have a hint option to give us a hint. If I choose that, we're told that option B is not the correct answer. So that rules out option B as being the correct answer here. Let's say for argument's sake that I didn't have a clue what the answer to this question is. I can have a look at the solution and identify that option A is the correct answer. Now the beauty of Tenjin is that you can always generate a similar question in learning mode. So now that I understand this particular question, I can generate a similar question, which, as the term suggests, is similar, but not exactly the same as the previous question. So it's the ability to generate an infinite number of instances of a given base question that distinguishes Tenjin from other similar types of software that are used for accounting practice and formative and summative assessment. In this case, now that I've learned off my formula for ratio analysis, I identify option C. So the first point I would like you to take away from this presentation is an understanding that you can never run out of practice opportunities. And that is important for accounting and finance and taxation related subjects, that you have plenty of practice opportunities. Opportunities to make mistakes, see your mistake, and then correct your own mistake. And that's one of the most effective ways in which you can learn accounting and finance related subjects. Now here's an example of a short computational question where you can see that we have a computational question to undertake, not options A, B, or C, but an input text box in which we need to write the answer. Again, I might not have a clue how to do this question, and so the hint in this case gives us an indication of how we should be thinking about answering this question if we want to. Again, if we don't have a clue, we can look at the solution to figure out, well, what is the gearing ratio? How do I calculate it? And we'd see some tutorial notes in the solution. And once we understand that, we can then generate a similar question. And note how we'll have a similar but not exactly the same type of question in the next instance of 694. So the learning requirement is the same, but you'll be able to do it on different numbers. Hence, prove to yourself, demonstrate to yourself that you are actually learning as you go. Now in this case, you can see if I put in the correct answer there, you can see this is how we earn points for CA purposes, for continuous assessment purposes, that when you have a correct answer, you'll be told that there are points added to your total and how many you have in total for that particular continuous assessment period. You can also see it over here on the left-hand side in the control panel. What you also see in the control panel are that the questions that I answered correctly are shaded green. If, for example, I answered a question incorrectly, you can see that becomes shaded red. So your objective for a study session should be to have a palette on the left hand side that is in its entirety green and be adding to your points accumulation for CA purposes and indeed for total purposes as well. Now if I go back to my search results for a moment, you can see to distinguish learning mode and learning mode where we have a hint, we have similar question opportunities. If we go to exam mode, you can see that the structure of the question is the same, but we don't have we don't have hints, or we don't have similar question. You have one go at the question. So truly reflects exam conditions that you have to attempt it first time. So we might get that question correct. That's excellent. And that is an indication as well that we're able to make progress in our learning, that we don't need the assistance of a hint or a similar question in order to be able to answer questions correctly. So that can be an indication to yourself that you're making progress. Now, if I go back to the search results for one moment, don't forget that you can select questions as you want to. What you'll also notice when I come back to the search results, if I scroll down a little bit, you can see now that there are some questions that are automatically deselected on the left hand side. And these are the questions that I have just answered correctly. They're these questions that I've just answered correctly. So this software is indicating that I should be attempting other questions, both in general as a learning tool, but also because points are not available for this particular question for CA purposes. Because I've answered it correctly, there's only so many times that I can answer a question correctly for CA purposes and be awarded points. Now let me draw your attention to a tab that emphasizes that, and I recommend that everybody has a look at the how am I doing tab, particularly the bottom part, and how do I accumulate points. This is important to understand, how you go about accumulating points and the different ways in which you can accumulate points for CA purposes. And don't forget this last paragraph at the bottom. For each short computational question, points are available for up to one instance of that question within a continuous 48-hour period. So you can only gain points one time, no matter how many times you answer it correctly in a 48-hour period. 2 instances in a 7-day period, 3 instances in a 30-day period, and 6 instances in a 90-day period. And that requires you, therefore, to make sure that you're answering questions from around the syllabus to be able to accumulate the points that are necessary to achieve your objective for CA purposes. And that's where the software can help you. Because if we go back to the start again, go into AC116. As we saw a few moments ago, some questions are automatically deselected. So if I select ratio analysis, questions are deselected And you can see that they're also pushed down the list of the search results, thereby steering you away from questions that you have answered correctly recently and for which points may not be available for CA purposes anyway. So I would be guided, if I were you, for CA purposes by the questions that are automatically selected by the software, because they're the questions that are more likely to have points available to them when you answer them correctly. Note also that you can only gain points for CA purposes on short computational questions. Points for CA purposes are not available on MCQ questions. Now, the MCQ questions are great practice in general, but you cannot accumulate points for CA purposes by answering questions correctly. So they're good for end of year exams, end of semester exams, and general practice for being able to understand the topics in advance, perhaps, of attempting it in short computational mode, because a lot of questions will be similar across MCQ types and short computational types. Now, the PDF download, for those who have longer questions that you might want to attempt, create the quiz in the same way, but you'll see that the quiz will be, or the questions will be generated as 2 downloadable PDF files. So when you're doing longer questions and they're available to you on your module, that's the way in which you would download a PDF file. So if I was making some recommendations to you in terms of how best to approach your CA, plenty of practice, regular practice on an ongoing basis. Okay, don't leave it too late, because the constraint on being able to score points can be problematic if you leave it too late in the semester to begin your work on CA. You'll see also here in the first page that there's an interactive progress indicator. This indicating the topics in which you're making progress and the other topics from which no progress has been made. So you'll see that green bar increase or decrease over time depending on whether you're getting sufficient practice on each of those individual topics. The last thing that I would say, just checking my notes here to see is there anything that I've left out. Regular practice, don't forget that. And there's no penalty for getting questions wrong. Okay, let me mention that. So although I answer questions incorrectly, there's no penalty. You're not punished in any way. The idea is to encourage you to practice. So there's no penalty for getting something wrong. It doesn't use up an attempt. It doesn't mean that you are eligible for fewer points. You just need to continue to practice to accumulate the points in a positive way. Make sure you study the How Am I Doing tab. I have also included a number of explanatory videos on the How This Works tab, short YouTube videos that will explain to you how to do other aspects I have explained perhaps very briefly today. And to contact us. So if you have a question in relation to how the software is working, or a suggestion, then I'll be happy to hear from you. If you complete that contact us form and submit it, that will come to me. So I hope this brief overview of Tenjin is useful for the purpose of firstly enable you to have sufficient practice opportunity in your module, and contributing to your continuous assessment in a non-stressful way. So I emphasize, if you start early and do a little bit of practice on a regular basis, you should achieve your objective without too much stress. Okay, that's super. Thank you very much for your attention today, and I wish everybody the best for the academic year.